Hey, David here, and welcome to my channel. So today, I'm taking a walk in the park. That's right, I'm in the actual park where I shot Walk in the Park, and in this episode, we're gonna be talking about production. So I am gonna walk you through this park. I'm gonna sit down at a few places at some of the locations where I shot some scenes, and I'll just tell you how I did the production of making this movie. Okay, so let's get some shop talk done first. I am out with my Nikon ZR today. Why do I have the ZR with me? Well, because it's easy to do this kind of thing. It's small, it's easy. I'm on my monopod. Like I've said before, nobody cares what I'm doing. And I might dive a little bit of that when I start talking about production, how shooting it with this camera would have been considerably easier than even shooting with the Komodo. But here I am, I'm sitting at one of the scenes. Actually, I'm wearing the shirt that I wore, I'm wearing the hat that I wore. I should probably take my glasses off. I wasn't wearing glasses. This was one of the scenes in the movie, and I was having a conversation with somebody over here. And so let's talk about one of the things of production that you have to think about, of what you can and cannot do, right? Or what you want to do, what you can do versus what you want to do. This entire scene I shot with the other two actors, and it's one of the few scenes where there's actually multiple people. There was only two different times. There was this time where it was me with two other people, and then there was another time where I had two girls and a guy at the tennis court scene. But those were the only two scenes where I really had more than one person at one time, if that makes any sense. And so even with this scene, I shot with the two girls over here, girls, I should say, women, the two of them, and there was one part of that scene where I was with them, but the whole rest of the scene, I'm sitting right here referencing to them, and they're not there at all. I shot this entire dialogue, if you will, of me sitting on this bench, and they weren't here at all. And so, it's funny because that's how most of the movie was shot, with me as well as with other actors. The person that they were talking to wasn't even there. Okay, I'm in another location here at the park with one of these benches, and of course, I've got the airplane going by, and I mentioned that because that was one of the concerns that I was going to have, of course, shooting out here. And I can't tell you every time, but there certainly were times that I had to cut or wait, if you will, let the airplane fly by. Um, it's a part of shooting outside, right? And so I don't know if which came first. I don't know. That's probably what inspired me for my, bushes, trees, and airplanes. When I said that, was probably shooting this movie in the park. So let's talk about some of the production things that I had to deal with, or I should tell you just some of the not logistics, but just real quick. I talked about it in episode 1. I'm just going to go over some of the equipment that I used. So I shot the entire movie with a red Komodo, the original Komodo. I had the lens that I talk about in episode 1, which was the 24 to 105 Canon. I had a Metabone speed booster on it. Shot a lot of the movie, probably f4-ish. I had an ND filter on the end, so I could just, it was a variable ND filter. And a lot of it I shot f4 for a couple reasons. I wanted, try to get, the lens a little sharper, as, if you will. Some 5.6 probably as well. But the main concern for me was about focus. And when you have people walking, and I had, of course, scenes with people sitting, like sitting on these benches and things like that. But when you have people walking and you're tracking them and you're using a stills lens, is that the best way to say it? A photo lens, not a cinema lens. The focus throw is very, very small. And so getting focus was a challenge. Now on the Komodo, I had, I'll show you a picture again. I can't remember the name of the attachment on the top, but it hooks directly to the Komodo, and I was able to plug in my phone uh, to the directly to the camera, so that it was very, very low latency, and I used that for pulling focus. Okay, So I used that monitor for pulling focus, and for the most part, it did pretty good. I can't complain. There was one scene that I shot, and it was a person walking. It was obviously it was here in the park, and it just wasn't right. It, you know, could I have gotten away with it? Yeah, probably I could have gotten away with it. You know, how many times do you see a movie where something's not completely in focus? But I just wasn't comfortable with it, so I ended up calling that actress back and saying, "Hey, I want to shoot this again." And I shot the scene a second time because I just wasn't comfortable with it. So I think the biggest challenge for me in shooting this from a production perspective was the focus and pulling focus. Um, Focus to me, and I've said this before, focus is arguably the most important thing shooting a movie, and you don't want bad audio either, right? And I'll talk about audio here in a second. But you don't want out of focus and you don't want bad audio, because those two things are huge, huge distractions. So shot it with the Komodo, shot it with that zoom lens, having to be able to change the focal length easy when I wanted to, was the main reason I went with the one zoom. But the focus, it was a challenge, but I was able to work through it. Okay, so I'm at another location here in the park, and I showed you before you came to this, I showed you that B-roll there was actually an entrance to where this location was, or is. This park, the way it's set up is it has a path that goes, you know, through most of the park, but then there's these little sections that go off by themselves. They're almost like these private areas, or, you know, contemplation areas, or whatever you want to call it. And you can walk in there, like for example, this one right here is 10, 20, 30, 40, probably 40 or 50 feet off of the main path. And that's where I shot a lot of the scenes on these benches. Now, something else I want to mention from a, you know, you have to, when you're shooting outside, you got to be aware of the sun. And right now you can see I'm sitting in broad daylight right now. It's directly on me. I've got my hat on, so it's blocking my face. This would not be an attractive a scene, would it? I would need to have a big silk or something like that to diffuse the light, soften things up and whatnot. And I'm showing you this intentionally because one of the other things I had to do in shooting this movie is I had to be aware of where the sun was and when I was shooting scenes. So for example, this shot right here, this was with the girl with the guitar. She was playing the guitar. I shot it from over there. The angle was this way, but there's lots of trees in this park, as you can see, but I had to make sure that when I shot this scene, the sun was in a place that I had tree cover, right? Because I wanted to have the shade to diffuse the light. And in case you guys don't know, that shade is very good about that. But one of the things you have to watch out with shade is that, you know, what's behind you. If you've got bright sun behind you and you're got somebody standing in the shade, now we're talking about a dynamic range issue, right? So in this particular situation, I had to make sure I knew where the sun was going to be. I knew the scene wouldn't take a ton of time. I don't remember exactly what time of day I did it, but I made sure that it was in a spot that she was going to have, you know, shade covering her face. And so now let's talk about something else about this scene. In this scene, there's her, and she has a phone call, and I won't, you know, give away the movie, but she gets on the phone, and then later there's a scene where a guy comes walking in here, and yes, you guys are already gonna know what I'm gonna say, right? They never met each other. To this day, I don't even know that they've ever met each other. Okay, so let's talk about audio and what I would say is the toughest scene of this movie for me, physically, mentally. There was a lot of hats I had to wear doing this scene. This is the scene with the two girls playing tennis. I'll show you after I talk about this. I'll show you, you know, parts of the scene, if you will. You may have seen part of this scene in the trailer as well as in episode 1 that I did. But anyway, so the first thing I want to mention is depth of field. Right now I've got the camera at f8, and the reason I have that is because I want to show you in this scene I had another character sitting in that bench back there, And so I wanted you to be able to see him. So this is an example from a filmmaking perspective, okay, that you don't want to have it be super tight on me because you want that person to be seen in the back. And there's actually a line where she's actually sitting over here. She says, I think that guy over there is talking about us, and you needed to be able to see that guy over there, or it doesn't make any sense. I would have to pull focus, right? And if I was using a cinema lens and I had some other, once again, the can do versus want to, I would have probably pulled focus on that scene, but I couldn't do that with this. So I had the lens stop down to, I don't know, was f8, maybe f11, but probably f8, so that you could see him in the background.
I think that guy over there is talking about us. He's giving me the creeps.
Really? Maybe we should go.
I think they're talking about me. They're looking over here and pointing at me.
Are they on the phone?
No, why would they be on the phone?
Calling the police, maybe?
Oh no, they're leaving. I gotta go. I gotta get their numbers or something.
Well, that's my cue to get off the phone. I look forward to hearing the rest of this story later at the police station.
Yeah, sounds good. I gotta go. I'll catch you later.
Okay, now I've switched to 2.8. See how much more separation there is on me? I'm in focus, that's not. Anyway, you guys know this story. So let's talk about the rest of this scene, about why it was tough for me. Let's first talk about audio. Audio on this scene, or I should say all audio, I used my Electrosonics wireless system, including electrosonic transmitter and electrosonics receivers, a UHF. I don't think I talked about it before in episode 1, but it's a very, very high-end, very reliable system. It's not the same as this Wireless Pro that I've got here. We can debate on and on about it. In this particular situation, it might not have made a difference because I'm in the wide open, I'm not far from them, things like that. But in other situations with Walk in the Park or other things that I'm doing, especially City Walk, if somebody's 100 feet away from me or whatever it is, and there's buildings and there's, potential interference and stuff like that. Anyway, UHF is more reliable. So that's the system I used. It was Electrosonics, wireless. And for the mic, I had a Sanken COS11, and it's a very, very nice mic. That mic alone cost more money than this wireless system I'm using right here by Rode. And the way that that mic is set up is it's very small, it's thin, and I used Ursa. I know this is funny, right? Ursa is not, I'm not talking about Blackmagic cameras. Ursa foamies. They're little black foamies that the mic goes right through the middle. And then for most of the people, when I mic'd them up, I did it usually right about here or maybe here. And I won't say who or where or when, and I didn't mic them up, but some women have another option. They can put it right here, between their chest. That's probably the best place to mic somebody up. I can't think of any guys that I did here. I might have mic'd them kind of like what I have with this one, where I had that foamy sitting right here and it was taped to it. But a lot of people, I did it up here or over here because that was just the easiest way to do it, especially the women. If they weren't comfortable putting it somewhere else, I put it right here.
USA?
USA!
USA! USA, that's what it was like. It was awesome.
Wow, I wish I could go to a Ryder Cup. That would be incredible.
Maybe someday you will.
Maybe, but my dad owns a lawn care business. Your dad owns a hedge fund.
As similar as those sound, they couldn't be different businesses.
Are we going to the fair next week?
No, I'm leaving again.
Leaving again? Where are you going?
Monaco.
Now this scene, why was this scene difficult? Well, this scene, I had 2 people, and on every other scene that I did with Walk in the Park, almost every other scene, I had the wireless mic transmitter, the receiver, going directly into the Komodo. I had it going from an XLR to a 3.5 inch, or 1/8 inch or 3.5 millimeter plug going right into the Komodo. So it was direct. But in this particular situation, I couldn't do that because obviously we had 2 mics, right? So for this one, I used my Sound Devices MixPre 6 mixer. And those of you that watch my channel, I might have mentioned it before because sometimes I use it with my Red Weapon Helium. Oftentimes I will use it for that, just in the studio or whatnot, but I'm not going to get into that now. So I had two mics, both of them were the same. They're both Lectrosonics. They're both the Sanken COS 11 mics. And I had them into my MixPre 6, and then I had my MixPre 6 going out directly to my Komodo. But I also recorded in the MixPre 6 because I wanted to have the channels independent, and so that's just the way I did it. So the audio that was going into the Komodo was for a scratch track, and I believe I went direct. I don't believe I may have done a wireless hop. I'm trying to think for a second. I'm pretty sure I did a little wireless hop. So once again, it was only a scratch, but that was the easy part. What made this scene more difficult for me is I also got to be the grip guy. And what do I mean by that? Well, you can see I'm in the sun right here, and the scene with those girls, I didn't want them wearing their sunglasses, and so I had a handheld silk that I held over them. And so you can imagine what that's like. Some of you guys have probably done that before or been in that situation. So imagine me having my sound pack on with my, receivers. The electrosonic receivers are not small. They're pretty good size. I've got my two receivers here. I've got the, anyway, all that, the batteries and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. Then I have it going to my Komodo. So of course, in these scenes, there's no movement. I can't remember if I zoomed in or zoomed out digitally, but I've got the Komodo sitting there. I've got my mic, I'm hitting record. I'm sorry, I got my mixer, I'm hitting record. I'm holding the reflector over them. And that's how I shot this scene. Whew, it was fun. Okay, so now let's talk about logistically about this scene, what was involved with it. So this is a tennis court, and there's actually multiple tennis courts here. There's 3 here, and this is kind of a pre-production thing. And I talked a little bit in production about getting permitting for the park, which I did. I had permitting for the park. But for this in particular, what I had to do is I had to reserve this court. It had to be this court because, like I said before, the scene involved him being back there on the bench, and he was talking about the girls. So I had to have this court. And at certain times, I'd seen that people were out here using all these courts, and I looked into it, and there wasn't really a club or anything that goes out here, but I found out that there were certain people that came out during certain times, but there was no guarantees. So anyway, I had the permit, but in addition to the permit, I also, for the specific shoot day for this, I reserved this court, because by reserving the court, if I came here and somebody was on it, I could say, hey, you guys got to leave, and, et cetera, et cetera. 'Cause sometimes people will just do that because, they're being nice to you. But, sometimes you run into people that, this is their court on Tuesday, and that's just the way it is, and they don't care who you are. So that was a logistic thing about that. Now, something else about this logistically, I talked about in pre-production, scheduling actors and whatnot. With the actor who was the guy, I had his scenes. He was actually he was one of the guys that had the most lines in the movie. Anyway, funny part, I like his character. I won't get into that. But the way I did this is I did the girls in the morning, and I had him show up around, I want to say noon or 1 o'clock-ish, something like that. And we shot this scene with the girls here. This was the last scene of the girls, and he was, I should say last line of the girls, and he was back there for that one shot, and we were good to go. I didn't need him there for obviously the other angles, if you know, but I'm not going to get into it. So he was there for that shot, and then the girls left, and then I got him set up, and I shot his scene. And as a matter of fact, the scene where he is looking at the girl, anyway, I'm going to tell you a little bit about the movie. It's not a spoiler by any means, but they hit the ball over the fence, and he thinks they're hitting on him, right? And so he gets the ball, and I have a scene where one of the girls goes up to the fence and says, hi, you send over the fluffy, I think it's fluffy yellow, whatever, I can't remember what I had her say. And what's funny about this is it's actually accurate. And I'll show you a shot real quick here. From the tennis the little workout area, if you will, the park course, we're going to call it, where he was doing the push-ups, is actually right next to the tennis court. So it could have literally happened. And so I shot him over there after I shot the girls here and doing the tennis scene, and then we went and did his stuff over in the more park section.
Hi, could you pass me the fuzzy lemon, please?
Okay, and then it's also worth mentioning, of course, I had the aerial as well, you know, the establishing shot. In the case of this, I believe I used it as an exit to the scene. It might have been established, I can't remember right now, but I'll show you the shot. I had an aerial of the tennis courts, and unfortunately, once again, back to can do, want to do. What would I want to do if I would have the girls here playing tennis, walking to sit down, et cetera, and I'd have the aerial shots of them doing that, right? That's the way a real movie would have been made, but that's what I want to do. I can't do that. So I had to shoot the aerials when they weren't here, and I, you know, shot it. And it is what it is. It's an establishing shot of the tennis courts, and, you know, it is what it is. Okay, so now I'm in the middle of the forest, right? So you know what's funny? Most of the scenes that I did of my scenes, if you will, there was nobody around me. It was like this. I'm going to go ahead and do a kind of a circle here. You can see. Maybe I'll actually give you some shots. I'll give you some footage here. You can see how, yes, I'm in the middle of the trees, in the forest, if you will. This, I believe, is part of the park. I can't say with 100% certainty. It's adjacent to the park. It's near the parking lot if you want. There's no pass through here, no nothing. So I came into this area, and what I did is I basically set myself up, and I just went and turned around in circles, right? I went from this direction or that direction, or that direction, and I shot a lot of the scenes of me, you know, talking to the mayor. I shot a scene of me talking to the, you know, the robocall guy, the spammer. I did a lot of my scenes right here in the middle of the forest, if you will, or middle of the trees, and there was nobody around me. There was no problems anywhere, so it was just easy to do. I think I had a day I did it, and I may have came back and did it on a second day, but a lot of the footage that I shot of me by myself was just standing here in the trees and just picking a different angle, and that's all there was to it. Okay, well, that's about it. Actually, there's just a couple things I want to just go over real quick just to kind of wrap things up. One of the fun things I should say here, I'm standing right here in the park. This is the poster scene, if you will. It was shot with my drone. I have my drone in here, and I should probably mention that the main reason I had the permit for this park was my drone. Even though I could take my drone, but I had my drone. I had some shots where my drone was going through the park. I mean, I had it down low level going through the park. I'll show you a couple shots where I did that, where I've got my Inspire 2 is a pretty good sized drone. I don't want to be freaking people out or anything like that. So I had the drone a foot off the ground, 2 feet off the ground maybe, and I'm going through the park. So that was fun to do. Another little thing, glasses. The fictitious name of the town or the city that that the movie takes place is called Sunwear, Florida. It's actually on the beach. This park is actually not near the ocean. That was the two main locations I had. But anyway, I called it Sunwear, Florida, and part of the reason I did that is people wearing sunglasses. And why did I do that? Well, it's a little fun, you know, a Florida thing. It sounds like a Florida town. But I also did it because if there were situations that I could probably pull out some, if I can find them in the movie, but I don't know how important it is for you to see them. But if I had a situation where it was direct sun and I don't have a silk with me. Remember, this is about what I can do, not what I want to do. I'm not hauling around a 10 by 10 silk, not even a 4 by 4 silk. If I had a situation where it was bright sunlight, I wanted the actor to be able to put their sunglasses on. And there were some, sometimes I'm trying to think if it actually happened where I think there was, she had her, you know, they had their sunglasses on because of the sun or whatever, and then they pulled them back, and you know, I wanted them to be able to, you know, show their face, right? They're actors, and so there's actually times where that happened. But anyway, that was one of the little things about the movie. The sunglasses, if they don't have them that they're wearing them, they usually have them on their forehead or nearby. That was a sunwear thing, but it was also a logistics thing of if I had a sun situation that I couldn't control. So this wasn't intended to be a nuts and bolts kind of production, if you will. Everybody has their own different cameras. I'm not going to get into the buttons I pressed on the Komodo and whatnot, but I just wanted to walk you through some of the things that I dealt with and had to think about doing production. And like I said this before, I'm going to say it again. It's about what you can do, not what you want to do. It's about minimizing the distractions. It was important that things be in focus. It was important that the audio was good. I talked about the audio. And if you can do that, you'd be amazed what you can do. Could this movie have been a better movie if I didn't do it by myself? Absolutely. If I could have done what I wanted to do, it would have been very different. I'm not going to get into all the different things I would have done. You know, I could have, you know, had extras walking around. And there's a lot of controlled things that I could have done, but I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it, so I didn't even try. So, as always, if you like this, thumbs up. If you don't like it, thumbs down. And I look forward to seeing you in episode 5, where I talk about the post-production for Walk in the Park. Take care.